Okay, I think I'll get us started. So hi everyone, and welcome to our, I think this is our fourth of a 6-session series on EDI. My name is Emma Wallace, and I'm the program specialist here at ECVO. Before we get started, I want to recognize that we're hosting this event on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place and traveling route for the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We also acknowledge all of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for millennia. I welcome any participants who are not from Treaty 6 to share where you're coming from here in the chat. I also want to offer our gratitude and solidarity to the Indigenous people who have and continue to care for, protect, and defend this land, despite the many injustices they continue to face, specifically our friends in BC right now. As an organization, ECVO and the Center for Race and Culture are grateful to have a public platform through which we can continue to promote learning, collaboration, and the exchange of information for the betterment of our communities here on Treaty 6. And then before I finish up the land acknowledgement, I do want to leave us all with a reminder that although this land acknowledgement is an important first step in our journey, it is really just that, a first step. Relationship building and allyship are kind of continual processes on our journey towards reconciliation. So with that in mind, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today, whether you're joining for the first time or you've attended one or all of our previous sessions. As I said, this is a 6-part series and it's hosted in partnership with ECVO and the Center for Race and Culture. And in this series, we're diving into concepts and issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion as they relate to the nonprofit sector. We had heard from many of you that there was a need for kind of learning and for meaningful conversation in this space. And so this series is just one way we're trying to support learning around EDI. So today's chat is about allyship, solidarity, and inclusive partnerships. I've been really looking forward to this chat. I think this is my kind of, this is the one I feel like I have the most to learn, I guess. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm so grateful for our panelists for joining us today. Before I do introductions, I just want to do a quick kind of housekeeping. So if you have questions throughout the hour, you can submit them in the question box, which is at the bottom of your screen right in the middle. It says Q&A. You're also welcome to use the chat function. 2 over to the right from the Q&A box at the bottom. You can use this for commenting, sharing resources, or connecting with other audience members. And then for those of you who'd like captioning, if you look to the bottom right of your screen, you'll see a CC button. You can click on the arrow to see options for subtitles or full transcript. And then following this session, we are recording, and so you'll get a recording of this session as well as a summary document after the fact. So I've now talked more than enough. I'll dive right into some introductions, and then we'll get started into the awesome chat today. So first, we have Jean Lemon. Sorry, I've already went way too French here. She is the founder, past chair, and current ED of Black Canadian Women in Action, and they operate as BCW. Founded in 2017 in Edmonton, BCW is a bilingual nonprofit organization committed to making a difference in the lives of minority Black Canadian women living in Western Canada. Oh, sorry, I lost my place. Here we are. Jean she holds a Bachelor of General Law, a Master degree of Business Law, a Master degree of African Studies, and a graduate degree in management. And in 2020, she was awarded the AC Awards Community Leader of the Year. So we are so honored to have her join us today. And I feel like this is just a wonderful topic to be chatting with you about. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for having me.
And then we also have Ellie joining us today. And some of you, if you've attended a previous session, would know Ellie, you've seen her moderating some of these sessions. She is the executive director of Center for Race and Culture. They're one of the hosts of this series. And she's joining us as a panelist today with a wealth of knowledge on solidarity and inclusive partnerships. Ellie is a university teacher, a storyteller, a public educator, and she's someone who's actively engaged in the community, raising awareness around interpersonal and systemic discrimination. She's developed adult education resources, coordinated training programs, and managed research and community-based projects. Like I said, Ellie is the executive director of the Center for Race and Culture. And I would say, just from knowing her for a little bit, wonderful human, and her area really is around EDI, bias, and inclusive partnerships, or inclusive communities, I guess you could say. So we're also grateful to have her here as a panelist today. Thanks so much for joining us, Ellie.
Thank you, Emma. Great to be here.
And then, unfortunately, our third panelist, Bernadette Ayatel, the co-founder and executive director of Creating Hope Society, had a family emergency this morning, and so she is unable to join us today. But we are wishing her and her family well, and hope she'll be able to join us in this conversation in the future. So again, a huge thank you for joining us. I'll be moderating today's session. As I said, my name's Emma Wallace. I have a list of questions that I'll kind of walk us through. And then I might also pull from audience questions as they come. And what I'll do is I'll just, I'll say, oh, Ellie, do you mind starting with this one? Or, oh, Jean, can you start with this one? And we'll kind of go from there. If you feel like you don't have anything to add to the question, just let me know and we can hop over to the next one. So with that, I've definitely now talked too much. So I'd love to dive us right in. So when I say the words allyship and solidarity, what comes to mind to you? What do these concepts kind of mean to you? And maybe Jean, I'll have you start.
Okay. So thank you again, Emma and CBO, to having me here. When we say ally and solidarity, I think these two words cannot goes together. You can't have an ally who is not in French solidaire. So it really goes together. So that means, for me, an ally will be someone who will first listen, who will be, I usually say, who will be there for me, and me also because what we see when we talk more about ally is like, it's like an ally is someone who will be giving, and we don't see what the ally will receive, but they're receiving a lot by giving too. So this is how I see when we talked about ally and solidarity. For me, so it goes together. I mean, being stand up for your, is even the cause too. So you will stand up, you will listen, you will not be taking the place of the person or the group that you ally of. So this is what that means. I come to mind when you talked about that, like right away.
Awesome. Those are great initial thoughts. Thank you. And Ellie, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I think John's point about listening, like active listening, that's an important piece when it comes to allyship and solidarity. I think it is not possible to build inclusive partnerships and work in solidarity with equity-seeking organizations and communities unless you have a deep understanding of allyship. And there's a lot of discussion around terminology these days. Some people are like, let's use the word co-conspirator. Let's use this word. And I think, yes, it's good to have those conversations, but let's not obsess over wording, but more focus on the meaning there. First of all, when it comes to allyship, an ally is a person who is committed to a culture of inclusion and equity. So it's a lifelong commitment. It is that sense of responsibility is reflected in their personal choices, personal decisions, in their professional life, their relationship with neighbors, with community members, with parents, with their children's friends. So it's reflected in everything that they do. That's an important piece to look at. And the other piece is it requires a lot of humility, a lot of learning and unlearning. If this is not a part of my lived experience, let's say as a non-Indigenous person on this land, it's not part of my lived experience. I can read about it. I can educate myself about it. I can listen to Indigenous communities, but also hold space for them. But if I walk around and keep calling myself an ally and co-conspirator, it doesn't help anyone. It's about the little actions. It's about everything that I do. So I would say let's not obsess over calling ourselves using these titles for ourselves. I think it should be handed to you. You should be called an ally by members of that community. So that humility is really important. The focus is, why am I doing this? Why it is important for me to play a role? Because I'm committed to a culture of inclusion and equity. And when we talk about equity, it is about identifying, challenging, and removing barriers to access, participation, active participation, contribution. So if you're committed to that culture, then it means it's not just your job, it's not just your organization, but it's every step that you take, every choice that you make on a daily basis.
Yeah, I really agree with Ellie, what she's saying regarding the word we use. I know that in my community, Black community, we are really divided. Some people don't just want to hear this word ally. What does that mean for them? But at the same time, sometimes we have to put words somewhere to define something. But at the same time, we know that it was asking, what can you call some ally? What does that mean? Because this is obvious. We have just, we have just to act. Instead of, saying I'm an ally. We are just in the world where we should have this solidarity as a human being and be there anyone for each other. So why should I be your ally or something like that? But at the same time, we don't know which word we should use. That's why I agree really with Ellie, that over the world, I think the fact we have to act.
Yeah, so it's about intent and action, but also that listening piece. And I feel like that gets at both, why is it that we're using these words, but also what goes behind those words, and what are we doing further than just saying those words. I love that. That was a wonderful kind of opening or dip into the conversation. Thank you both for sharing.
Emma, can I add something there? Is that okay? I think what follows after the conversation is happening here for me is being aware of performative acts, or performative allyship. That, you know, we post something on social media, that, you know, we use these sometimes empty words that don't help anyone. So I think in all of these spaces, depending on the context where we hold power and privilege, it's important for us to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Is this really helping that community? How can I do it in a meaningful, fundamental way? And how can I make sure this is not just performance or a performative act? So that's an important piece when it comes to solidarity and allyship. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And maybe before I ask the next question, I'll even share a bit of an example. I'm on a learning journey right now, specifically towards reconciliation, and I'm kind of understanding our Indigenous friends and communities here. And so when I first started land acknowledgements, you know, we had a template, and I was reading those at every event. This was, I don't know, a couple or a few years ago now. And I was like, truthfully, pretty, look at me go, like I'm doing my acknowledgements. I'm getting there, you know. And I actually had a conversation with a wonderful human who I was in school with at the time, who was Indigenous, and said, you know, a land acknowledgement is maybe not meaningful if it's just a script. And so, you know, at the time I was like, oh, but I thought I was doing well, kind of thing, you know, and it is exactly that. I think what you've just said, that performative piece, is so important. We have to kind of get to the root of our meaning and our intent behind that. And since then, I've taken a class on how do you write a land acknowledgement? How does it become meaningful to you as a human? How do you attach it back to your experiences? And how do you go beyond that? So, you know, there's a land acknowledgement for today's event. And I recognized our communities who are fighting injustices right now as they defend their land. But I'm also writing letters to my MP and to provincials. And so I feel like it's a bit of, we're recognizing our communities, but we're also acting to support them. And so maybe that's a kind of a good little reflection of learning there. So yeah, I think that this next question kind of dives a little bit more into this. So I'd love to jump in. And so in order to practice solidarity in a meaningful way, to build inclusive partnerships, we kind of need to understand our power and privilege in different contexts. But like I really just said, the truth is that sometimes we can feel a little bit defensive or like we're already doing something when we go to address these concepts. So I'm kind of wondering your thoughts and suggestions for our participants here today. If they want to deepen their understanding of power and privilege to be better allies, you know, how do they take that step? How do they do that? And maybe I'll start with Jean again, if that's fine.
If they want to do so, I think what we, because given that I know on the other side, I can say, so usually we start saying that an ally should listen, then you know, you talk about empathy. I usually say that all the time. I say we are in the country where even when our children and all do say to them, you know what, when someone say you hurt me, or I feel bad, or you have to listen, have empathy. And then sometimes if you are the cause of that, if you are the one who hurt, you have to maybe apologize. But what usually happens with our community, I'm talking about the Black community or Indigenous, is that people, it seems like people don't care. Or when you say, I feel bad. I don't, for what, this is how I feel. They will say to you, you know what, you like to bring everything on your race. It's not about that. Just ignore. You don't want to talk about that. And what can we do concretely? I think we all know what to do because everybody know what is good, what is bad, especially today in this century, 21st century. We are not in the century where people can say, oh, I didn't know. So we all know, and everyone know the right thing and how to do the right thing. So when we talk like regarding like the Black community we can talk the workplace. I'm very surprised, and we talked about that all the time, that we will see a lot of women, Black women, very well skilled, but usually they will be in low positions or some position. It's just like that because they don't see them anywhere else. So you can say, oh, I have this or that. You can, even you will be, but it's like no one see that. So I think we can be, we all talking about all those topics, but after good discussion, good conversation like this, everyone who have authority, who are responsibility, have to ask to themselves if they really do inclusion. Yeah, so it's not just about, having good discussion and asking what we have to do. I had this conversation with the young people. Usually I talk a lot. We have a program here for a young age, from age even 6 to 18. And I usually have the conversation with those who are age, let's say 10 to or 12 to 18. So when I talk with them about all what is happening, when we have those conversations, they say to us, you know what, we don't have to educate anyone. So people have to educate themselves. So this is how they see things. And then they see themselves like, okay, we are part of this. We don't even know why they can, we have to be like, it's like they're putting us on the side when they start to talk about like this inclusion and all that. But the truth is, yes, we are there and we have to do something. And ally are very important in what we want to do together. But I think even those allies sometimes they don't practice what they say. So in the workplace, we have to understand that, yes, I am the ED here. So it's my staff, my board. We have the board. Who is in my board? Is this inclusive or no? So these are things we have to, because, in our community, people know sometimes what they're saying also all this time is that I think in the society is always like, okay, we want to do for you. That's why we forced you, and it was very good for you to start asking what it means to us to be ally, or because sometimes is not sometimes, usually is like, okay, we know what is good for you. We will be doing, we'll help you. We will, but the truth is, people know who they are, what they can do, and they want to do by themselves. And this is what an ally too have to, understand. It's like coming together, but it's not me being there because I want to save you. So no one is looking for a savior. So this is what is happening in the Black community today.
I feel like I love these sessions because I leave with so many thoughts and reflections and questions and things to think about. So I'm going to sit with what you just said for a second before I follow up on it. And maybe I'll pass it over to Ellie while I'm kind of percolating here.
Yeah, I was taking notes while you were talking. Wonderful, wonderful. Power and privilege, I think understanding these two concepts are very important. First of all, power and privilege are relational, contextual, and not absolute. What do I mean by that? Let's say someone from a racialized community, they share their experience, their challenges with systemic racism. And I've heard this in a lot of training sessions, and people say, life was tough for me. I was in a working class, I was raised in a working class family. We had similar challenges. Why do you make it about race? I think understanding the fact that there are all these intersections, there are all these layers and aspects to the way we experience the world, we perceive the world and are perceived by others is very important. So if, let's say, the focus of a conversation in our community is about racial equity, the lived experiences and challenges of Indigenous, Black, and other racialized communities do not cancel the hardships of the reality of someone's life who was raised in a working class family. These are two different aspects. It means for that person, economy and socioeconomic class was a barrier for them. But that doesn't mean that their skin color contributed to their challenges. So it is important to see that as a person sitting here, depending on the context, I hold power and privilege. In one context, I have more power and privilege than another one. Sometimes I'm less advantaged and sometimes I'm more advantaged, depending on the context. For instance, as an educated person in a leadership position in the nonprofit sector, within the organization, I have that power. So I am responsible. There's that sense of responsibility, how I use that power working with my colleagues, working with community partners as stakeholders. But as a racialized woman who is an immigrant, the moment I open my mouth, people can tell from my accent. So depending on where I am, that might work against me. So it is important to see power and privilege not as absolute concepts, but as relational and contextual. So if there is a group of activists, if there are community leaders talking about gender-based violence against trans folks, as a cisgender woman, I don't need to get defensive and say, oh, you know what? I experience violence too as a woman. Why do we talk about trans folks? Instead of saying, their experience doesn't cancel mine. These are different experiences. So keeping that in mind, and then also thinking about it, oh, okay, so what is my power and privilege there? And how can I advocate for them? How can I use my power as a community member, as a leader, you know, as someone who's a professional in order to advocate? Where do I need to hold the space, right? So keeping that in mind is very important. The next piece is, once you have that awareness, the next piece is, oh, from tomorrow, I am going to go and become the spokesperson for all equity-seeking communities. No, you don't. What you do is that you lift others up. You share opportunities with others. If you're sitting at a table, a decision-making table, identify the voices that are missing from that table. So the idea is that you want the diversity you see around us in society to be represented. So they are included, therefore we address these issues together. I remember, was it 2016, with a large number of Syrians arriving and resettling in Canada. There was this conversation about nothing about us without us. So, you know, sometimes we have the best intentions in the world. We do. But if that's not my lived experience, I need to work with folks from those communities, right? So we don't need to be people for others. We need to share opportunities. We need to invite them to the table. We need to identify when those voices are missing from the table and kind of learn how to lift others up.
I totally agree with you. Then I can say also, Ellie, that when we say perception, I will say fact. It's not just perception, because as I can say, I don't know if people, I think it's what we want to perceive, what we want. I think it's a choice people do, maybe an unconscious choice, but it is a choice. Because when you see in the society where we are living in, every day I was looking with my organization a certain time, I wanted to have a woman, black women who can, you know, a millionaire in the business, so that I have also those young women who want to do business, who will see that, oh, we do have a role model. But I couldn't find that. How can we explain that? It is because we cannot have a black woman, you know, at that level. It is because they are all stupid, excuse me, or no. But what we see, even with statistics, is that, especially here, since you know Canada is an immigration country, those who are coming, in French, they say, c'est la crème de la crème. That means Canada, immigration in Canada is, you know, is a very chosen immigration. So I see all the time, couple are coming, you know, male, female, family, all of them very well skilled. But usually women will be there without sometime a job, or even men when they have a job. We have always that glass ceiling where they cannot go more far further. And we see that every day in the society. We see that every time we hear, oh, this is the first indigenous, the first black people who occupy this position. So we know that it's there. It's not something we can say, okay, but people keep saying that, oh, you know, me too, it happened to me, I'm this, you know, racial, it happened to all of us. No, it's not true. You have just to be, you know, to face the truth and to say, okay, have that courage. I understand that, yes, we are maybe have this courage to say, okay, there is those problems and these people face this and I'm uncomfortable, but it's real. And this is the first thing we have to, as an ally, we have to understand and try to, you know, see how we can fix the problem also where we are at. As I'm saying, we can have all these conversations, but when we come in our own company, we are EDs and all that, we will see that there's no diversity, even if we are advocating for that. Oh, no, I'm asking to myself, we're doing this because sometimes it's a trend, or because just we have to have a good conscience that, okay, I'm doing good thing, or we really think that this has to be solved. But for me, I think for us, it have to, because this is not just about those people we highlight, or is about the society we want to have, we live in the society we want. So we don't want to leave some people behind, and especially people who are, as I mentioned, very intelligent, you have everything. So they cannot just be standing there and looking and be happy. No one came in Canada just to come and, see the snow. Everyone want to be successful. We all, it's the same thing. When you see people, you ask them, they want to have, if they have children, they want their children to be successful. Themselves want to be successful. I never see someone who will say, oh, me, I just want to be there, and then have people who will be guiding me, who will be leading me. No, everyone have the same thing. So that's why I think we have to, and then stop thinking this is just a perception we have for, no, we have to face the reality and understand that, accept that, and see how we want to, where we want to go. Yeah. And then you talked about, so this diversity to be, so accept also that diversity to be, to be like represented. So yes, as I mentioned, so we have to understand that, yes, we have to be, when you are an ally, when we are sometimes, because usually we are not where decisions have been made. And you guys, I think you're in English, they say, when, I like this expression, sometimes I like those English expression where they say, when you're not at the table, you're on the soup, or something like that, you say. And this is true, because when you're on the soup, they'll be eating you, right? So what usually happens is that we are not at the table. And when we are not there, the decisions are usually made without us. And I think this is something that's why we need that also when we talk about diversity, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We need not just, again, people in some positions, or even in the company, in organizations and the government. We need them to be really where decisions are, because when they are not there, no one will think about them. Even an ally won't think usually. I mean, they can say, oh, those people, maybe we should also do for this group of people, but that's all. They are not there to bring, to understand the soul, what these people really, I think they can understand, but when you don't live something, it's sometimes difficult to understand it globally. So that's why I think there is no way to think that even the allies, which is good, that, and I'm very happy in the era we are living in, because this type of discussion, we couldn't even have it like, some year ago. So that means things are getting better, but I think people won't have to wait too long that thing become better. So I think it's really the time now that everyone be conscious that things have to change, and that Black people, indigenous, and all racialized have to be at the table and reflect how our society is. Me, I'm a French speaker, and I usually go, when I see the Francophone school, I see that there is a lot of, Francophone, as you know, the Francophonie, as those who carry Francophonie today as African, sub-Saharan African, because all those countries speak French. So when they come here, they are, family are young, they have young children, they are full in school there. That's why I think there is no way they can just be there and then don't be where decisions are usually made. So that's why allies, when they're there, is to have to, understand that it's not just listening, then be empathic, then try to speak. All that is very important, and ally have to do that. But we have to be concrete. We have to, understand that right now we need to be there, and we are here, and we think that it's very important for us. We don't want people to talk on our behalf sometimes. We want to be there talking, for ourselves too. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. Like Ellie, I was furiously taking some notes there. Yeah, so I think there's a couple things that I heard that I'd love to just kind of re-emphasize for folks before we kind of move on. One of the things was that it's up to us to educate ourselves. We can't rely on other people. We can't rely on Black women. We can't rely on Indigenous folks. We can't rely on racialized folks or racialized women to educate us. It is up to us. And I say us being someone with more privilege, someone who is white, someone who holds a bit more power. It's up to us to educate ourselves. And I think that's like a really great point. I think it's something that we probably, hopefully do know, but it's really easy to, there's someone there who can tell you. And I think it's really easy to fall into that pattern. And so that's something I wanted to flag and kind of reiterate is in our journeys towards reconciliation, to being an ally, to standing in solidarity with people, the first step is to educate ourselves, and that means taking the time and the effort ourselves to do that learning. So I think that was like a really awesome point I wanted to emphasize. And then the other point, I think both of you spoke to it really well, is about who holds space and what do you do with that space. And so if you're someone who, whatever the context, if you're someone who has a bit more privilege, a bit more power, you are able to hold space. Who else is holding space in that conversation or in that work, and who isn't? And how can we, those with that space, kind of say, hey, what about these other folks? And then, like I think Jean, you said it really well, is there's a place for us to be acting, but there's also a place for us to just be saying, hey, these folks, they know and they can speak for themselves. Let's make sure they're there to speak. And so I really loved that. So got a dog in the background who's having a little dream.
Yeah, great.
He did. Okay, I'm conscious of our time here, so I'm going to hop us right into the next question. And so we've talked a lot about, I think everything we've talked about can be applied at an individual level, but that then translates to our work. But this question kind of focuses more at that organizational or community level. So how can organizations with more privilege, so those organizations who have influence, who have resources, who have large audiences, how can they support, highlight, advocate for or with equity-seeking organizations and equity-seeking communities? What role do they play in this work? I'm going to mute myself because the dog's going.
That's good. Yeah, I think there is different type of ally. I think everyone where they are can do something. It's not everyone who will be, going out there, and then some of people, as I foresee, it has to start where we are at, as someone who have a privilege or authority, like in a company, so this person should know that I have this people who are here. Be a little bit curious. I think when you go to, I know you will say maybe when people apply like for a job, some of people tend to even hide a credential because they think maybe if I give that for this, that I won't have the position. But at the same time, I think we can be a little bit curious. We can maybe talk to it because you will see that even when someone wants to hide, let's say someone who is very well educated and then they want to hide that, you will see that it's not true, because the way the person maybe will be expressing something, you can find that that person have maybe something more. And as it is to us, maybe to come and say, okay, so what's, try to be a little bit curious, and then you understand that maybe that person should be in another place than where they are. So people can advocate, people can be, you know, champion, can sponsor a lot of, you know, they have a choice, and but more than that, act. So that's why I think even when it shouldn't be just the inclusion, you know, equity and device system inclusion shouldn't be just something for some group of community. It should be for everyone. As again, as I first say, because we need a society that is a very coherent, because people don't see, they see like today where we live, everything is good. But I think if we don't pay attention and we let a lot of frustration, if people are too much frustrated, so we will pay, maybe not us, but our children or children of our children will be paying one day. So that's why we don't even have choice. I think we have just to try to act.
Awesome. Thank you. Ellie, I'll let you speak as well.
Sure. So when you ask the question about organizations, agencies with more power, with more privilege, I think of umbrella organizations. I think of larger agencies with core funding from different levels of the government, right? More financially more stable. So I would say they can play a very important role. This is for leaders in the nonprofit sector. Just because there is something is the trend right now, you don't need to start a new program on anti-racism. You don't need to start a new program on ethnocultural capacity building. If you don't have the expertise, there are so many smaller organizations, grassroots groups that have been doing amazing work. Their work is rooted in the needs of the community. They are very knowledgeable, well connected. You can partner with them, elevate them. And creating those inclusive partnerships, I think that's where I want to go back to what John said about voices at the table. But just by inviting people to the table, and you have a diverse group of people in terms of gender, you know, in terms of racial identity, in terms of, you know, all of those aspects, you invite them to the table and you're like, okay, we are diverse, problem solved. It's more than that. It's about how you hold the space, how you share power. I've seen this. It has become very common for larger agencies with the social capital, with the financial resources, to invite experts, community leaders, community organizations to the table to start coalition groups and you know. But what you see when you show up, you see that power is not shared. It's top down. People, even when they identify the missing voices, their comments are ignored. And I've seen a lot of those. And I've mentioned it. I said, if you are a backbone agency, if you are an umbrella organization, you have access to more financial resources, wonderful. Use it in an inclusive and equitable way. Utilize the expertise that is in the community by creating a space where power is shared and people are compensated for their time, for their expertise. They don't owe you their stories. They don't owe you their expertise. There is a difference between admin and leadership. And I think that is confused a lot in a lot of these coalitions. If you have the resources, give them admin, give the group admin support, compensate them for their time, but let them have that shared leadership. It takes time to build trust, to build meaningful relationships and to create co-leadership models. It's not just, I got a grant, we got a grant, we have $1 million, I am going to bring 15 organizations to the table, we run it, we know how to do things, this is diverse problem solved. What happens is that people show up and then after a while they are discouraged because they see inequities embedded in the system, and you see that you have reduced it to the interpersonal level and very superficial, but they don't see change in behavior, in systems, policies, procedures. That's how it happens basically. So my advice to organizations and agencies with more power is that utilize it in a meaningful way. There's so much expertise in the community. Bring these voices together, elevate them, give them the admin support and support that co-leadership model. If you want to see sustainable, long-lasting partnerships that can have impactful social projects that benefit the community. That's why we are here. That's why we are in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, Ellie, I'm very happy that you say that, creating an exclusive partnership. And I can even give an example. I know Black Canadian Women in Action. So we started, for the first time, we had a mentorship program for young girls. So that went very well. And we see that there is a mainstream organization that also started to have that mentorship for. But the thing is, the way, because I live in, before coming here, even in Edmonton, so I live in somewhere else, France and all that, and then I came. But the model we have here usually is that people don't even know those communities. People will be, they can call some maybe leader or some people from the community. Sometimes they cannot reach the community itself. So we'll call some people, maybe some voice, some who are known at the table, without being sure that what they want to do with those people at the table will reach communities. I think people don't know the community itself, because African community, I know everyone thinks that all Africa, an African person is an African person. They think that's the same thing. All country, we are all, so Africa is a continent, but people usually talk about Africa like one country. For those who don't know, just to let you know, me, when I came in here in Edmonton, this is where I even learned about a lot of African country, what to do, how to live, all that. I know I leave Africa very young, and even in France, I didn't have some contact with some of African people from some African countries here that I discovered them. But people just think that Africa is a country, why it is a big continent. So, and then they don't know those communities who are coming. Those I saw how the Black community here in Edmonton is increasing. Like in the Francophone, I remember that like since 2011, and we are the third more important community, after Quebec, I think Quebec and Toronto and Quebec. So in the population, Black population here, but people don't know, but they are coming from diverse countries. Sometimes you can have maybe one leader, but that leader will not reach another country, So that's why it's very important to understand who are the players. And since here, I usually say we have diversity, but inclusion, this is why we have to work very hard, because as you know, usually community are just by them. Or each community is just, even the country, sometimes even, or in a country, you will have diverse small group who have, maybe they will have their own association, or so people don't just know to who so that's why it's very important to include, to make sure that, you know, this to create this inclusive partnership, as Ellie just mentioned. And when we have, because we, like when you have an organization like BCW in Action, so that is about all Black women, no matter where they are coming from. This is reflected not only in the board and also those who work for BCW. So we know that we can reach all, I mean, at least a lot of, you know, Black people coming diverse communities, because we are not just one community. We know not only we have people coming from the continent who are diverse, then we have Caribbean over here, we have also a Black Canadian, we have those coming from Europe. So people just don't just put everyone in the same basket. So it's very important to understand that when we have, like, there is as Ellie mentioned, when we have this, if we wanting to really change, see how we can partner if with those or some organization, understand that they have expertise, and understand, again, I'm saying that they want to be, you know, they want to take their own destiny on hand. They don't want people to be leading them, or no, because they're grown enough, I think, and they know what they want. They know what they want in this community. They know the community. They are from that community. So, and everyone is saying the same thing. Usually, because I'm in the Francophone community, this is what they usually say. We know our community, so we need resources for our community. But the problem is, when come like to Black people, we deny that. It's like, no, you shouldn't even ask to. You have to just do. We will be there, you know, helping you to get there. And this is what everyone say. No, I don't need that. I know what I can do, and there's no reason that I have to have someone telling me or guiding me. So yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point to highlight, but also to end on. We have 2 minutes left, so I am going to wrap us up right now. But I will kind of just encourage folks who are here today or who are watching this webinar later to remember to think back. I mean, it's a lot, right? It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to digest. It's a lot to reflect on. And I think that's okay. It's okay to take the time to reflect on that, ask yourself critical questions, and remember one of the points that Ellie mentioned at the very beginning. This takes a lot of humility, right? And I would just kind of echo or kind of reinforce that as we're going through this. That it's a learning, and it takes that humility, and it takes that understanding. But this is such a critical piece of who we are as humans, but also what we do in our work here in the nonprofit sector. So I'll say I am so honored to have spoken to both of you about this in this context. Thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your experiences with us. We've got some folks in the chat who are saying thank you as well. So it's super, super appreciated. And then thank you to our participants who are here and willing to kind of come on this learning journey with us. We recognize and appreciate your interest and your learning and your efforts as well. There will be a recording and follow-up summary document sent out next week to anyone who's registered, so that you can kind of continue your learning as we move forward. So it's 11 o'clock. I won't keep people. I'll say thank you again to our participants and to our panelists.